I'm just going to say it right now. You are welcome. Today's episode is that good. I'm going to share with you today 6 types of speech errors that tell us that it's likely more than just speech, meaning it's likely there's also a concurrent language delay. These 6 errors is what you want to pay attention to if you're giving a speech sound disorder test or if you're taking a connected speech sample. And when you see these errors, you definitely want to look at the child's language in greater depth. So I can't wait to dive into these 6 errors because these errors are not just based on my clinical experience, my expertise, my opinion, deductive reasoning, not at all. These errors are based on research. Each of these 6 errors I'm going to share with you were not only present in one peer-reviewed published research study, they were actually all present in multiple studies. So these 6 errors are something you're definitely going to want to pay attention to. I also wanted to share my great news. I don't know if you've heard this before, but my favorite speech sound disorder textbook, which is my own, the Speech Sound Disorder Comprehensive Approach to Evaluation and Treatment, because you know I'm all about treating the whole child. That book was translated this year into, drum roll please, I can't wait to put this pick up, Chinese. So my textbook is in Chinese. If you live in China, you got to get this book. You have to email me and tell me what you think. I can't wait to hear from you. If I do say so myself, there's no speech sound disorder book even close to my book. And the reason for that is because there's over 100 digital clips that show you this is what the research looks like on Monday morning. This is what the research looks like in practice. This is what you do. No other textbook has that kind of resource for you. And that's when the learning occurs, when you see the research in action. And that's my mission in life, is to take this research that I'm going to share with you today and say, this is what it's going to look like on Monday morning. So literally, you are at my side. We're working together. This is what I'm doing right now. I am giving speech sound disorder tests to pretty much every child on my caseload. Any child that is talking, I want to know what's going on in your speech. I want to get baseline data. Now, I give the speech sound disorder single word test, the exact same test. I give it 4 times a year. Now, let me explain why. The research indicates that for generalization to occur, that you're going to see on testing, you need at least 6 to 8 weeks. So what I do is every single progress report period, I test the children and see where they are because I want to know about generalizable gains. Now, you know that I am all about the complexity approach, and I'm about the complexity approach because I found that it works, and the research is showing that it works, not just for children with phonological processes, but for children processes across the spectrum of speech sound disorders. So the more complex targets are showing to be more effective for children with apraxia of speech. They're showing to be more effective for children with articulation impairment. They're showing to be more effective even for children with speech motor delays, such as dysarthria. So across the continuum of speech sound disorders, not just those with phonological processes, more complex treatment targets get better results, period. More and more and more research to support it every year. I'm focusing on the clusters, the 3-element clusters. And what I'm getting in exchange for that is P, B, T, D, N, W, F, V, S, Z, Ch, J, all that lies underneath that, even L and R in the later stages, for free. Because I'm working on the 3-element clusters and I'm getting a cascading effect in which all of these sounds underneath it are quickly developing. I've taken fireworks and I put it to the system. So this is why it's really important for me to give the speech sound disorder test 4 times a year to look at those generalizable speech gains, to look at all of these gains that I've never even focused on. And I've gotten these for free because I'm working on the 3-element clusters. Let's dive into these 6 types of errors. The first type of error is an atypical error pattern. And an atypical error pattern is when you have a harder sound that's later developing and you substitute that for an easier developing sound. For instance, maybe the word is toe, like the toe you have on your foot, and the child is saying row. Like it's like R across all languages, cross linguistically, is a complex sound that develops later on. T across all languages linguistically is one of the first sounds to develop. So when a child is breaking the rules of our innate linguistic system, and they're saying one of the hardest sounds and substituting that for an easy sound, they're saying row for toe, that tells us there is probably some type of neurological difference. There's a reason for them to go against the innate rules of how we develop speech across languages. I always think of it as if you're holding your cell phone and you're taking your cell phone and you're holding it on the other side of your ear, and you're like, okay, I'm talking on the phone like this. Why are you not using the arm and the hand right next to that ear? You're using your left hand on your right ear to hold your cell phone over your head. There's a reason for that. You're doing something way harder. There's something wrong. There's some underlying reason that's beyond what is the natural course of speech development. Of course, naturally, what happens is you say a simpler sound for an easier sound. That's number one. You're looking for atypical error patterns in which they're substituting a later developing sound for an easier one. Just a side note that I wanted to share with you, and I wonder if you found the same thing in your practice. Over the past 20 years, I've had many students who back. And by backing, I mean they say the consonant K or G for T and D. So they're backing for T and D. Instead of a doe, a female deer, they'll say a go. That I have not found to be related to language delay. That is often referred to as an atypical phonological process. But I will tell you, in my own research, my own clinical experience, I have not found children who back, who say K and G for T and D, if that's the only thing they're doing. I have not found that to be related to a language delay. And I think part of that is because cross-linguistically, there are some languages where the K and G develops very close in development. So for children to switch that around and to back the front consonants and produce them in the back of the mouth, that's actually not that atypical because they develop for many children at a similar time period. And for in some languages, they develop at the same time. That is just my 2 cents when it comes to backing. I don't call backing an atypical phonological process. I am alone in that. I can tell you multiple articles do refer to it as backing as an atypical process. I don't. And the reason for that is because they develop in such a similar time period. And also in some languages, they develop at the same time. And I've known so many children over the years, many, many, many children who were backers, and they did not have a concurrent language impairment. Number two, this is when we're omitting consonants or syllables. There's multiple studies that have shown that there's possibly a concurrent language impairment because they don't seem to understand that a word has a beginning sound, a middle sound, and an ending sound. And when boundaries of the sound gone, where you don't hear anything at all, that tells us that maybe there's a weaker underlying linguistic system. It's not just speech. This child doesn't even seem to know that there's a sound at the end of the word. For instance, instead of saying pig, they say pid. Well, that's good. They know that there's this sound at the end of the word. When they say pit, it's like, do they not even realize there's a sound, that there's a tail at the end of the word there? That indicates that they're more likely to have a language delay and not seeing that there's a word boundary at the beginning, middle, or end. The same thing with multisyllabic words. So for instance, if the word is elephant and they're saying afa, okay, so they're missing a syllable here. Do they not hear three syllables and they're not able, because of verbal working memory, to hold those three syllables and to express those three syllables, which is a hallmark of language impairment? Did they not even realize we've got three syllables in the word? So we would like it a lot better if instead of saying alpha, they say elephant. And there's something there. Maybe they just stopped the F for a B instead. That is the kind of error where we're like, okay, they're dropping an entire syllable. Maybe this child has a weaker linguistic foundation. It's more than just articulation in the mouth. There's something else going on here. Let's look at the third type of error, saying the same word and saying it differently every single time. There's that lack of consistency. For instance, for the word fish, maybe one time I call it a bit, and the next time I call it a fit, and the next time I call it a bish. And every time the word fish is changing, there's that lack of consistency. So I'm going to give you some words that we say in speech therapy and linguistics. They've called it segmental variability. They've called it token to token inconsistency. Now, once again, that tells us maybe there's this linguistic foundation that is not very well developed. If every time the child says a word, it comes out differently. So there isn't that nice motor programming, motor planning underneath it all that builds that consistency, that automaticity is not there yet. Let's look at the next type of error, number 4. This is vowel errors. Now, most children at age 2, they master the vowels. They know their vowels. They point to the cow and say, ow, that's the cow. So they know the dog will be ah, and the pig is eh. So the vowels are all down. They're saying those vowels. They're saying those diphthongs. They can sing E-I-E-I-O and all of the animal sounds that each of the animals make. That is all there. Now, what happens when that's not there? Now, once again, they're saying they're consonants, but the vowels, which universally across languages develop first, they're breaking that rule and they're saying they're consonants, but they can't say they're vowels. So that's once again like a neurological difference. That's not how we innately develop speech across languages. Across language, everyone masters the vowels. Then we get into the consonants. So what is going on here when, for instance, instead of hearing cow, we hear ka, and it's a centralized vowel. It's not a diphthong. Or if we hear pig, which is that I, instead of I, we hear ha. Like, what's going on here? You should have these vowels down at 2 before the consonants. Once again, if you see these sorts of errors that are going against how children innately develop speech across all languages, why are they breaking the rules across languages? Is there a neurological difference responsible for that? Is there a language weakness, a language foundational difference that needs to be addressed? Now let's look at number 5, and that is difficulty repeating back strings. So if they're saying pataka, and instead of saying pataka, they're doing something like metathesis, in which they're reversing the sounds, saying katapa, they're saying it backwards. Or maybe they're saying pa. What we could think is maybe this child linguistically is having problems taking those 3 syllables and putting them in order and then expressing them. In other words, they're having this verbal working memory problem in which they're putting them in the wrong order, or maybe they're repeating the same one over and over again because they can't remember 3 different syllables. Another test that we could use is known as the syllable repetition test, and you could Google it, it's free. And the syllable repetition test looks at easy syllables such as pabama. So it'd be pabama tada. These are easy to say syllables. And are the children are able to sequence those easiest to say syllables in the right order and express them? If they're not, maybe it's not about speech, but maybe it's more about language and that verbal working memory in the sense of the ability to store those sounds, put them in order, and then express them. The last one, number 6, phonological processes are totally normal. And those are simplification rules. For instance, if we're going to say fronting, right? So we might say instead of pig, we say pid. We say the G in the front of the mouth. Instead of cat, we might say tat. We're saying the ka in front of the mouth, tat. So that is something that is totally normal when the child is preschool age. It does not indicate a language impairment. However, when we look at children at elementary age, we expect that they would have grown out of these simplification rules, and instead they would not be doing this anymore. They would have suppressed it over time. Now, the research indicates that if they persist and they still have these phonological processes, these, let's say, these rules of speaking in a simpler manner, that's an indication that perhaps there is a weaker underlying linguistic foundation, that there's perhaps likely a language delay as well as a speech delay. Once again, the research that is not panning out at preschool age, don't lose any sleep at preschool age, promise me that, if the child has phonological processes. But when the child has phonological processes at elementary age is when you really want to take a look at language. It's kind of like grammatical morphemes. When you have grammatical morpheme errors at age 3, that's very normal. It's when the child is 4.5 and 5 years of age is when you should become concerned that there is a language delay as well. In short, look at these 6 clues. Number 1, substituting easier sounds with harder ones. Number 2, omitting consonants or syllables. Number 3, inconsistency, saying the word one way, another one time, a different way, you're saying the same word. The next time, the same word said a different way next time. Number 4, vowel errors. Vowels should be mastered at age 2. When you see children older than age 2 that have difficulty with vowels, there might be a weaker language system. Number 5, difficulty repeating strings of syllables, such as pataka. And number 6, phonological processes that persist into elementary age. I don't want you to lose any sleep over phonological processes at preschool age. Many children have phonological processes at preschool age, and they do not have a concurrent language delay. When we get into elementary age is when you really want to take those seriously. I want you to take all of this information, apply it to your current speech testing, and roll up your sleeves, make the world a better place, one child at a time. You will always be first.